For those of you who are maybe newer to CPS and I have not met or have not met me, I am Lori Frick. I'm the Child Protective Services Director. It's great to see you. Before we get started, I always scroll through just to see some faces that I don't get to see all the time. So it's good to see you. If you don't have your camera on, please turn your camera on. If you have a question to ask at the end of the presentation, I want you to turn on your camera, raise your hand, turn on your camera, and then the presenters will call you out to give you an opportunity to answer the questions that you have about the presentation. I want to give a shout out to Claire Wisniewski. She has put together a CPS careers webpage that I've asked her to put in the chat so that you guys are aware of what is out there to help us with some hiring, interns, things like that. So it's pretty cool. Definitely encourage you guys to go out and take a look at that. It's a nice tool that we have not had before. So please give it a look. I want to thank you guys for stepping up to give this presentation today. So Deb Corder, Abby Ryan, Tracy Gale, and Kelsey Wade, thank you for this. I hope you were able to get your Squishmallows along with you, getting prepared for your presentation, Kelsey Wade. But looking forward to you guys hearing from them about some of the tricks and tips for some timely visits and reports. These are a couple of workers and supervisors that stepped up to the plate to give this presentation today that have done a really excellent job of being very timely on those things. So I hope that they can give you some tricks of the trade. What I think is really important across the board is if you are in the process of doing your work and you have found some kind of a trick that helps you to be organized or make sure that you're being efficient and getting some of your work done, by all means, please share that amongst your peers and your supervisors, because something that maybe just seems routine for you isn't necessarily going to be routine for someone else, and people can learn from you. So make sure that you're sharing that, but I think you're going to hear some of that stuff today as well. So without kind of holding back on this presentation, I'm going to hand it over to these four to get us going. Maybe. Who's taking the lead? Tracy, Kelsey?
Kelsey, don't chicken out on me now.
Is Kelsey here? I did not see her when I was scrolling through.
Hold, please.
She is on the call, Lori.
We are anticipating this presentation.
It's not working.
We hear you. I heard you. Now you're muted, Kelsey, but I heard you.
Oh my goodness, were you waiting on me?
We sure were.
That's freaking.
I mean, look at you.
Awesome. That is so awesome. You know what I did? Yeah, I was like, oh, I don't want my thing beeping at me and my email's going off. But that's the whole thing. That's awesome. Okay. You want to start this over?
Good for you.
Go for it.
Half an hour.
Kelsey Fashion. Am I introducing myself?
Yeah, go for it. You got the lead. Take it off.
Okay.
All right.
We were asked to do this for tips and tricks for timely visits and reports. So I'm going to be the first presenter. I'm Kelsey Wade, a supervisor in Dubuque and Jackson County in the Eastern Service area. So we can start our first slide. So Iowa code requirements for child protective assessments. Iowa code requires that for all family assessments, they be completed in 10 days, and all child abuse assessments and China assessments can be completed in 20 days. Next slide, please. It's always the expectation that reports are submitted and approved timely. 18th and 19th day protocol is to ensure your supervisor has time to review your report and give directions if changes are needed or any further actions need to be taken. In regards to family assessments, they are doing the 9th day to the supervisor no later than 12 p.m. Child abuse assessments need to be submitted to supervisor on the 18th day, no later than 11:59 p.m. on the 18th day. Hopefully no one is working that late and submitting their CPW reports that late, but in regards to the protocol, it does go to 11:59 p.m. Next slide, please. So I was asked tips for what I do with my staff as for my child protective workers. I'm a life of the case. I do child protective workers and SWCMs. I took the tips for the child protective workers. All my staff know this is an expectation of mine, the 9th and 18th day, and just consistency with that and communication, which you'll hear me talk about in all 3 of these tips. Those are the 2 biggest things, I believe, is consistency and communication. I have frequent supervision with my CPWs, where we have case updates. We talk about outstanding items, things that need to be completed yet. If it's collaterals, follow-up home visits, what evidence preponderance we have, where law enforcement lies. We talk about the findings of the assessments, again, with the preponderance of evidence we have. If for any reason addendums need to be done, where we are a lot of times, like we said, that has to do with law enforcement. Again, I'm going to plug in the consistency and communication. If we're talking, if I'm available and there for my CPWs, there should be no reason why the expectation of having things in on the 9th day and 18th day is not being done. And then one other thing that we really strive for is to timely identify a SWCM that's going to be assigned a case. So if we're having frequent supervision with my CPWs, we're talking about what the findings are going to be. And then I make note with my co-supervisor, who is also presenting today, we have a conversation of who we think will be best for the case, and that's identified early. So then the SWCMs and the CPWs can start having conversations to best work with the family. Next slide, please. And I am now going to hand this over to one of my child protective workers, Abby Ryan, who works very consistently on getting her reports done timely.
So yeah, just some tips and tricks or how I typically do things. When I get a case, I still like paper files, so I usually print out the intake. And then I just start a list of what I know will need to be done. Especially when I first started, I found the child abuse checklist to be beneficial. I know there's a couple versions out there, just a really lengthy checklist on every single thing that needs to be done. So, I also like utilizing OneNote on my computer. So I start a list knowing what collaterals I want to contact, what all needs done. And then when it is done, I just highlight it and I know it's done. So I like glancing at that often so it doesn't get to be 17th, 18th day and I'm like, oh shoot, I didn't contact this non-custodial parent or a collateral. So yeah, and then like I said, I like paper files too. So I will have the intake and any notes and police reports and everything in a paper file so that I can just pull that out and have that right in front of me as I'm doing my notes. And then I just like to complete my note as soon as possible when I get back to the office. I know that's not always possible, but just trying to get something documented. I usually utilize a Word document at first and just documenting any contact I had same day or next day. So yeah, that's just kind of my process that I found helpful to get my reports in timely and get things done as soon as possible.
And I'm going to talk next about the SWCM notes, so the ongoing cases, the notes. As you all know, it is important to capture the practice and the great work that you are doing in a written narrative form. Case notes really provide that written record of interventions, progress, and efforts of all those involved in the case as your case moves through life of the case, moves towards permanency, and then ultimately safe case closure. Case notes also serve as a reference document throughout the life of the case and may be made available to the family, attorneys, or the court upon request. So just remember that when you are typing your notes, to do the best at keeping them very professional, lots of observations, kind of descriptions, describing what you're seeing and what you're talking about, as best that you can, because they may be, like I said, used or requested by the family, attorneys, or the court. Best practice to ensure accurate and thorough case notes is to get them in Jarvis right away, kind of like Abby said. When the information is fresh on your mind, that's the best time that you're going to remember everything that you discussed or observed to put in there. The other reason it's so helpful to get them in Jarvis as soon as you can is if you were off for some reason, an emergency came up and you're off, that a supervisor would be able to look at those notes and be able to kind of capture or know what has been going on most recently. Minimum standards for getting your SWCM notes in is that your initial note in Jarvis is due within 20 business days of the case opening, or if the child goes into foster care. And then after you get those initial notes in, it is the standard that we get our notes in within 20 business days of each occurrence or month. So by the next month, having them in there. Next slide. Some tips that I do as a supervisor is I email my staff usually around the 15th of each month, and I get an update from each of them to see how they're doing with getting their visits for that month scheduled, and then how they're doing with getting their notes in for the previous month. So we're having that either dialect, they'll come to my office then and give me an update, or they'll respond to the email giving me an update. And it kind of is a checks and balances for not only me, but the workers to look to see, oh, shoot, we're halfway through the month. Who do I still need to see? Am I going to run into any issues? I check ROM quite a bit and just kind of see what's in there, see how progress is. If I see, we're getting close to the 20th of the next month, I'm maybe checking in with my worker to say, hey, I've noticed you don't have any notes in yet. Let's get some notes in. What's your plan? The other thing that I like to do is be accessible in staff case frequently. So for example, as we're talking, is the parent all of a sudden moved 2 hours away, and so you thought, oh, this was going to be an easy thing, I could leave it towards the end of the month, but now it's going to be an all-day thing where I potentially have to drive 2 hours to see that parent, or are they coming back for court? So just frequently discussing cases, our parents' kids moving placements, where are they going to be, so that you can still have that time management to get those children and parents seen. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Deb, and she's going to share some of her tricks or tips that she uses.
Hi. So, some of the things that I do just to make sure that I'm not missing anybody, that need to be seen is I go into, I can't think of what it's called now, where you can print off your, list of like your caseload. And I go in there and get my caseload every month at the beginning of the month, and I print that off. And then as I'm calling people to schedule appointments or doing things like that, I mark like an S beside their name so that I know that I have them scheduled, and that I make sure that I'm seeing them each month. And then for me, in reference to getting my notes done, when I've completed a note, I'm a paper person too. I like to have my paper calendar. And so I write my appointments in there. And then when I've seen the family and I've got their note completed, I highlight that in my calendar. But if you don't use a paper calendar and you're using your other calendar, you can go in and modify like your visit and put done beside it so that you know that note's been completed. For me, I like to get my notes in right away because it gets it out of my head, especially if I went to a visit and there's been a lot going on and things like that. So I try to do the visit or I try to do the note when I get back from the visit, but that's not always possible. So I try to set aside a time each week to make sure that I can get my notes done. And again, I know things happen. It doesn't always happen that way, but I try to set a time to be able to do that. Waiting to the 20th is torture for you, trying to remember everything that you've done with the family during the month. So it's best not to wait to the 20th. It's best to try to get those notes in as soon as possible. And like Tracy said, if there's an emergency and I have to be out for a couple of weeks, I need her to be able to look in there and know exactly like what I did with my family, when I saw them, what we talked about. And then another thing is using the standards for documenting a quality visit, using that checklist. If you have questions about like, what should I put in these areas? I know people do notes differently. Some people don't address all the areas and they just do a summary at the bottom. I find it easier if I'm doing each area this way. I know I'm covering each part of what needs to be covered in my documentation to make sure that it's accurate and correct. So those are just some of the tips that I use just to make sure that I'm seeing my people each month and getting those notes in.
And now we would open it up if anyone has any questions for us, or if you don't feel comfortable asking the big group, you could reach out to any of us through email after the presentation or anytime if you want more explanation of kind of what's working so well for us.